Hello and welcome to Reel2RealTalk. It's a crisp winter's day here in London, but with temperatures plummeting to -5 in the city recently, how do people living on the streets actually cope? I'll be talking to two charities, CIDER, the first ever homeless pop-up store where you can donate and the goods are delivered directly to the homeless, and Rhythms of Life, whose founder, Andrew Faris, lived on the streets for 5.5 years. Now, every big city has its fair share of challenges with homelessness, but what can we do to help those living and caught up in the homelessness trap? Thank you for joining us today. I wanted to start by asking you what your inspiration was for CIDER. Where did this idea come from?
Well, it all kind of started when I was having a coffee with my co-founder, obviously before she became my co-founder, and a guy walked over to us and asked us for some spare change. We got really awkward and said no, and kind of didn't know what to say to him, and then we kind of realised that everyone does the same thing in that moment, despite feeling incredibly guilty and empathetic, but we don't want that money that we give them to be spent in a way that is going to do more harm than good. So we then realised that actually charities are the same, you don't really know where your money's going. So we came back to London and did some research, and we decided to come up with quite a transparent solution, we hope, that allows people to give to the cause, make a difference, but feel completely comfortable in the way that they're doing it, and they know exactly when they buy a jacket on the site, a jacket is getting into the hands of a homeless person.
It's got an unusual name, CIDER.
Yes.
Where did it come from? What was the inspiration behind naming it?
Well, when we came back to London from Berlin, after we kind of started talking about this problem that existed, we went and met up with some shelters, and we went and spoke to some homeless people in this city, and one of them actually told us way more eloquently than we could have ever said, people don't give me cash on the street because they think I'll spend it on crack and cider. And it so nails the stereotype that everybody is thinking in that moment when they're asked for change.
CIDER do work with charities as well. We should point that out, the fact that you work alongside other charities to distribute your stock. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we always partner with existing shelters or soup kitchens around London, who we take all our stock to, and alongside the hot meal they were then giving a jacket, or they were giving a fleece, or they were giving a thermal set, or all the items that people had bought, and I think it was just like a nice extra.
I wanted to ask you about CIDER's work with Rhythms of Life.
Mm-hmm. Last year we had so much stock to distribute, it really was a case of just rang them out of the blue and said, hey, we've seen what you're doing and we think it's great, and we just come and give you stuff.
They approached us, had this brief meeting, okay, let's go with it, and then they gave us the goodies they gave us. We had some already, but it really, really helped, in fact, on the day, because we didn't have to buy many more things, so that saved us a hell of a lot of finance we could utilize elsewhere.
We've always made a rule, I suppose, that we'll work with smaller independent organisations.
In the last 12 months, the things that we gave out, we couldn't thank them enough.
Rhythms of Life was set up in 2008 by founder Andrew Faris, who was inspired by his experience of reporting on the Kashmir earthquake in 2005.
When we started the charity in 2008, we started on a small garage, tyre garage. Now we find ourselves in central London. We learned a lot in the last 8 years. Every year we learn something new. Every month we learn something new. For example, in 2008, there weren't so many young homeless girls. Now there are. We used to have like 50% of our service users, for example, were Polish. From that knowledge, we've learned that they need English classes. So we do English classes now. We didn't do them then. We now do literacy because it's essential for their jobs. There are people who are very lonely and they need maybe to occupy their mind. We do art classes. So we're doing things that we think would preoccupy their minds. We now be able to get them something, a suit, clothing, to make them presentable for interviews and do their CVs. So a lot has changed, yes. And I think we are able to meet more needs for them now than what we were able to do then.
We're here outside the HQ of Rhythms of Life, and we're about to go on a food run, and Crack and Cider are also here to hand out some stock. So let's go.
We give a food parcel out every night. We've done that for the last 8.5 years or so now. I don't think we missed a day yet. And then along with that, we're not just now serving food, surplus food from the supermarkets, from the food outlets, would have gone to waste. We pick it up. Again, from experience of being on the street, you find out what is it you would love to have in that food parcel when you receive it. You may put in maybe some toiletries, or you may put in some gloves, you may put in some socks or hat or whatever, particularly in the cold winter months.
Rhythms of Life continue to provide valuable services to central London's homeless community, despite facing a housing crisis of their own.
We are sitting in a temporary building at the moment. We don't have a permanent home. We could be made homeless ourselves, I would say within the next 2-3 months. Maybe somebody out there, if they know of a building that's empty and they know the landlord, maybe they're able to provide us some space that we can carry on doing our project.
So tell us where we're heading now. Where are we going?
We are heading down to Leicester Square. We're going towards Strand and Aldwych. And basically, normally we have a bigger food pack. Today we only got sandwiches from Eat, and we got a couple of cakes, and we got tea.
Okay.
We got hot tea and mineral water.
A little bit of something is better than nothing,
This
right?
is our early service. The later service will have cakes and things in it.
Okay.
So that's later on with hot food.
Okay.
All right. This is the early thing.
Okay. Let's go.
Let's keep going.
You would have got
When someone nicked our stuff,
Did you speak to the homeless and find out what kinds of things they really needed?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was internet research as well. We did talk to shelters to try and figure out exactly what people needed. But it was quite nice, really, actually, because one of the things, because we're so small, was just literally me and my co-founder who work on it. We're able to adapt and change things as we go. So the more we do it, the more we learn, the more people can suggest items as well. So the things that you see on the shop today have come from a whole range of different kind of sources. But someone got in touch and said about dog packs. So we thought, oh, that's a good idea. So we put one together and worked with Lily's Kitchen as a dog food company, and they donated all their stock. We've actually recently just launched the women's pack, which is actually really interesting because it's based on the fact that you remember all the whole tampon tax situation that happened last year, but tampons and towels and sanitary products are still considered luxury. So when it comes to funding shelters are given money for things like condoms and razors because they're considered essential, but sanitary products aren't, so they're not covered in the funding. So women are having to buy their own.
Wow.
Which, when you're in that situation, that's the difference between a meal and dignity, I suppose, and cleanliness and hygiene. So it's a really awful, difficult time for women every month who are living on the street. So the women's pack has all the sanitary products that she's going to need for the month, maybe a little compact mirror, just little bits and bobs that, to help her feel a little bit more cared for. Then, yeah, apart from that, it's the jackets and the fleeces and the backpacks, the thermal set, which has socks, gloves and a hat. That one was quite interesting in a way, actually, because we found out, we started off doing it with a scarf rather than the socks, but then from our research we realised that actually the least donated item but the most needed is socks. So we swapped out the scarf because we figured it would be more useful. If you want to buy something on behalf of a friend or family, you can give them a little Crack and Cider gift card.
Tell us a little bit about what happened to you and how you became homeless and what that experience was like.
I think you find yourself running a business, being extremely, maybe you might say over-ambitious, try to compete with the big boys by opening more offices than what I could perhaps at the time manage. And I think that was the thing, that you find yourself homeless on day one, day two, you realize you've literally lost your house, you lost your cars on the same day, you're split from the family at the time, They're taken elsewhere in a different borough altogether. Data protection wouldn't even tell me where they were at the time. They wouldn't tell me where they were. So I never managed to find them for the years I was homeless. It was really bad. I can't even begin to tell you how it is. The feeling you get when you become homeless on the day one and you're actually on the street with a bag or a suitcase. And I had a suitcase, a bag, and another bag too. You know, I wanted whatever I could take out, I had. And then you find, hang on a minute, there is no help here. Backman was my space where I would sell the Big Issue magazine perhaps, and then along with it work every day. It's become a habit now anyway. Work every day to do other things too in order to gain enough finance in order to restart the life. And in 2008 there weren't so many soup kitchens, advice centers, there weren't so many charities, and there was no rhythm to life at the time.
That isolated and alone, there's a mental health issue as well as a physical well-being. So could you give us maybe one positive experience that you had as a homeless person living on the street?
There's more negatives than positive, I can be honest about that. Definitely more negative than positive. But the one positive thing that did come to mind is that somebody saw me speaking to somebody on 2 different occasions. And he came over to me and he goes, by the way, I run stalls, for example, in the market, on a Sunday market. I said, you can talk to people, as I could. And he said, you know, what about you can help me maybe? And then obviously that got me thinking, you know, that hang on a minute, there is another business here. I don't have to be selling a magazine in order to survive. And that got me started. So there was a positive thing that come out of it, I would say. I can't forget that. That was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, what was your darkest moment?
There's several. Burning the shoelaces while you're sleeping. You know, they put the fuel on and they lit up my trainers. So you wake up with a burning foot. You know, it's just crazy that people can do it. And nobody's the wiser because nobody's watching it. Time. It's very late in the morning. And one of the other things that happened was the hosing in the morning. The hosing in the shop fronts. If you're sleeping in the shop front, you're trying to find a space to protect yourself. So those were the kind of moments that stand out in a memory that you can never forget.
I've got loads of stuff in these bags. I don't know if any of it's any use to any of you. I've got like backpacks, big hiking backpack.
Right, someone nicked my rucksack last night.
Oh, really?
Hey, there's someone in my radio.
We're here in Leicester Square and the couple behind me, the girl's rucksack got stolen last night with some of her belongings in it, so she has nothing and all she's got is some stuff in a plastic bag and her boyfriend's radio was inside that, and it just really, it sort of brings home to you how the little things actually mean quite a lot. But that's what I wanted to say because they don't want to be on camera, so I wanted to say it for them because it's a dangerous place. But you know, look, they've got Christmas hats on. They're still embracing the festivities.
We're doing regular distribution, so people going back and can buy as many things as they want throughout the winter.
We need more volunteers, naturally. Just got to go on our website, volunteer@rhythmsoflife.org.uk, and you can click in and volunteer with us.
I wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for the kindness of the public, you know. I'd have died out here. Many other people would as well, you know. You get a lot of support, a lot of people do care. Yeah. It's nice to see, like, you know.
Yeah. It's been really heartwarming actually. Loads of people have emailed asking how they can help and how they can volunteer, but it's such a kind of lean operation that there's not really that much need for volunteers at the moment. But I think it's just a case of going on buying what you can afford.
Donations of, say for example, sleeping bags, toiletries maybe, winter coats, like maybe books, blank books, pens, these things all help. We lack shoes. Nobody wants to donate shoes. Particularly men don't buy many shoes. So if anything like that comes along, that would be absolutely fantastic.
People who are experiencing homelessness will contact us directly and say, I really need some socks, or my friends need some sleeping bags, or we need some jackets. And I'm running around London on my lunch breaks answering these kind of requests.
Okay, wow.
I mean, it doesn't happen every day, but it does happen. You think there are these huge organisations out there that are making millions of pounds in donations, but people are still having to contact someone like me, who's an individual who's just never worked in charity before, or just started this thing out of nowhere, and I'm running around London trying to do something to help.
I always said that no government deals with it on a long term. It's very short thinking. It's short-term thinking. They think about the term they're in the government. So they're not actually tackling the core problem of homelessness. Maybe there are many skills amongst the homelessness that the government should be looking at to utilize. There are some very knowledgeable people who are sitting on the street, on the pavement.
To remember, people are dying on the streets. I know that we're not solving homelessness, but we're doing something to try and get some warm essentials out there.
I think hope is a wonderful thing. I think you can never give up hope, and I think you've got to have some kind of an aspiration in life to do something.
And telling their friends and family about it and spreading the word about what we do, so really helpful.
We're coming to the end of our run. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's been amazing to meet everyone and just come out and actually kind of meet people, hear their stories, and it was the best bit for me definitely was the woman who'd actually had her backpack stolen last night and then turned up today and was able to give her a new one, or the new women's pack as well. She was so grateful. She really said she needed some tweezers and a compact mirror, and it was all in there, so she was so happy, and it was really nice to have been able to do this.
It's good to meet friends every day. We meet them on a regular basis. One new face today, as I said in my other thing, is that we didn't meet the face earlier in Charing Cross Road before. So he's a new face to us, so we need to know what he needs. So it's good, it's good. At least we went round and served the food.
Thanks for watching Reel to Real Talk. There are so many stories that we collected that day on just one single run. But the thing that struck us the most was the spirit of generosity and camaraderie on the streets. It was simply overwhelming.
My mate Ron, he sits like...
Yeah, he's there, I know.
Is he there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give it to him.
He'd love that.
Not to mention the incredible humour. To Suez, Queenie, Shamrock and many others who wish to remain anonymous, know that you are not invisible.
Thank you very much.
God bless you all.